Something shifted. You can't name it precisely, but you feel it. That subtle but unmistakable sense that reality has become more fluid around you. Colors seem slightly more vivid. Time moves differently, sometimes stretching, sometimes compressing. You catch yourself noticing patterns everywhere, repeated numbers, unexpected encounters, thoughts that manifest as experiences within hours instead of weeks. These aren't random occurrences. They're the first signs that your quantum reality has begun reorganizing itself around a new frequency you've been broadcasting. The shift didn't announce itself with fanfare. It whispered through the cracks of your ordinary life. Maybe you woke up one morning feeling inexplicably different, not better or worse, just fundamentally altered at a level too deep for words. Maybe conversations that used to drain you now feel irrelevant, like echoes from a life you've outgrown. Maybe you're finding yourself making choices that surprise you, not from impulse, but from a knowing that bypasses logic entirely. This is what the beginning of a quantum shift actually feels like, not the dramatic transformation you imagined, but a subtle rewiring that makes everything familiar feel slightly foreign. You're experiencing what physicists call a phase transition, that moment when water begins to become ice, when one state of matter transforms into another. Except in your case, it's consciousness itself that's changing state, and reality has no choice but to follow. The disorientation you might be feeling isn't confusion. It's coherence establishing itself where chaos used to reign. Your old patterns are losing their grip, but the new ones haven't fully crystallized. You're between timelines, standing in the doorway between who you were and who you're becoming. This threshold space feels uncertain because it is. Multiple possibilities are swirling around you, waiting for your continued observation to collapse them into your new reality. If you recognize these signs, if you're nodding because you've felt this inexplicable shift, then subscribe to this channel right now. Not to follow more content, but to anchor this transition you're experiencing. That simple act of subscribing is a declaration to the quantum field that you're ready to stabilize in your new frequency. Every video here will help you navigate this in-between space with clarity instead of confusion. You might be wondering if you're imagining all this, if perhaps you're just being overly sensitive or reading meaning into meaningless events. But here's what you need to understand. Consciousness doesn't shift gradually. It jumps. Quantum leaps are real, sudden, and often subtle in their initial appearance. The fact that you're questioning whether something has changed is itself proof that it has. Your old self wouldn't have noticed these signs at all. What you're experiencing is the collapse of superposition. All the possible versions of you that have existed as potential are now condensing into a new, more coherent configuration. The static you might feel, the sense of being between stations, the moments of clarity followed by confusion, these are all signatures of a quantum transition in progress. Your consciousness is learning to stabilize at a new frequency, and like any instrument being retuned, there's a period of adjustment where the notes don't quite sound clear. The signs will intensify in the coming days and weeks. Not because you're forcing them, but because once a quantum shift begins, it creates its own momentum. Reality starts responding to your new frequency before your mind fully understands what's happening. Synchronicities accelerate. Outdated relationships naturally fade. New opportunities appear from nowhere. Your old life stops fitting, not because it's wrong, but because you've literally become someone it wasn't designed for. This is your initiation into conscious quantum living, not through study or practice, but through direct experience of reality's malleable nature. You're discovering that the solid world you thought you knew is actually refreshing itself billions of times per second, and in those refresh moments, everything can change. You've started broadcasting on a new frequency, and now you're witnessing reality reorganize itself in response. The process has begun, and there's no going back to unconscious creation. You're standing between two radio stations right now. The old frequency hasn't completely faded, and the new one hasn't fully locked in. You're getting both signals simultaneously, sometimes clear glimpses of your emerging reality, sometimes static-filled echoes of who you used to be. This isn't a malfunction. It's exactly how consciousness transitions between quantum states, and recognizing this phase for what it is will help you navigate it with grace instead of resistance. The in-between frequency feels like living in two worlds at once. In one moment, you're operating from your new awareness, clear, expanded, connected to everything. In the next, you're pulled back into old reactions, outdated fears, patterns you thought you'd transcended. This oscillation isn't failure or backsliding. It's your consciousness learning to stabilize at a new frequency, while your nervous system, your relationships, your external reality all recalibrate to match it. Think of a piano being retuned. Each string must be adjusted individually, and while that's happening, playing a chord produces discord. Some notes ring true at the new pitch while others still vibrate at the old frequency. Your life is that piano right now. Some aspects have already shifted to match your new vibration. Perhaps your morning routine, your creative expression, your inner dialogue. Others still operate from the old programming, certain relationships, financial patterns, defensive mechanisms. Uncertainty becomes your constant companion during this phase, but not the anxious uncertainty of not knowing what comes next. This is the pregnant uncertainty of infinite possibility, the space where anything could happen because nothing has crystallized yet. You're in superposition, existing in multiple states simultaneously, until your continued observation collapses you into a new, stable configuration. The static between stations carries its own intelligence. It's showing you exactly what needs to be released, what patterns are fighting for survival, what aspects of your old identity are incompatible with who you're becoming. Every moment of discord, every feeling of being pulled backward, every temptation to abandon this transformation, these aren't obstacles. They're your old frequency's last attempt to maintain dominance. Your body might feel this transition intensely. One day you're energized beyond belief. The next, you can barely get out of bed. Your sleep patterns shift. Your appetite changes. Your sensitivity to others' energy increases dramatically. You're not getting sick or falling apart. Your physical vessel is literally reconfiguring its electromagnetic signature to match your new consciousness frequency. Every cell is being rewritten, and that process requires enormous energy. The relationships around you become mirrors of this frequency shift. Some people suddenly can't hear you anymore, like you're speaking a language they don't understand. Others are drawn to you magnetically, recognizing something in your field that resonates with their own transformation. You're not rejecting anyone or attracting anyone. You're simply becoming visible to those on your frequency and invisible to those who aren't. This in-between space has a timing that can't be rushed. Like a butterfly in chrysalis, you can't speed up the transformation without destroying it. The dissolution of the old must be complete before the new can fully emerge. Every time you try to force clarity, to demand that reality choose one station or the other, you create interference that actually prolongs the static. The key to navigating this phase is radical acceptance of the uncertainty. Instead of trying to tune in one station clearly, allow both to play. Instead of choosing between your old self and new self, witness both with compassion. This isn't indecision, it's integration. You're not meant to abandon everything you were, but to alchemize it into something new. The static itself is the signature of expansion. A consciousness that never experiences uncertainty never grows beyond its current boundaries. The fact that you can hold multiple realities simultaneously, that you can feel yourself existing in different timelines at once, that you can witness your own transformation while experiencing it. This is mastery, not confusion. You've been trying to force change through willpower, and it's exhausting you. Every morning you wake up determined to be different, to think differently, to choose differently. By noon you're back in familiar patterns. By evening you're frustrated with yourself for failing again. This isn't weakness, it's physics. You're trying to override a massive electromagnetic field with a tiny electrical impulse, like trying to change the ocean's tide with a teaspoon. Willpower operates from your prefrontal cortex, generating about 0.1 watts of electrical power. Meanwhile, your heart generates an electromagnetic field 60 times stronger electrically and 5,000 times stronger magnetically than your brain. Your gut contains 500 million neurons constantly broadcasting emotional memory. Your cells hold trauma patterns in their very structure. When you try to use conscious thought to override this massive field of embodied memory and emotion, it's like shouting at a hurricane to stop. The deeper field always wins because it's not just stronger, it's older, more established, more deeply wired into your survival systems. Your body learned to protect you before you could speak. It developed strategies for safety before you could think. These patterns saved your life, or at least your sanity, when you were too young to save yourself. Now they're running automatically beneath consciousness, generating a field that no amount of positive thinking can overcome. Resonance works differently than force. Instead of trying to overpower the old field, you create a new one alongside it. You don't fight the old frequency, you simply stop feeding it attention and energy. You begin generating coherent emotional states that gradually establish their own field. Over time, this new field becomes stronger than the old one, not through battle, but through consistent presence. Think of it like this: you can't defeat darkness by fighting it. You simply turn on a light. The darkness doesn't resist or struggle. It simply ceases to exist where light is present. Your old patterns, rooted in fear and protection, can't exist where love and safety are consistently present. But this requires more than mental understanding. It requires emotional coherence, body-based safety, cellular recognition of a new way of being. Your emotional body speaks a different language than your thinking mind. It doesn't respond to logic or arguments or even affirmations. It responds to felt experience. When you try to think yourself into feeling differently, you're speaking English to something that only understands music. The frequency has to be felt, embodied, lived in your tissues before your emotional field will recognize it as real. This is why so many people fail at transformation. Despite doing everything right, they're operating from willpower when they need to operate from resonance. They're trying to think new thoughts while their body continues broadcasting old frequencies. They're attempting to override a symphony with a whistle. The memories stored in your body aren't just psychological, they're electromagnetic. Every significant emotional experience created a specific pattern in your field that your body now recognizes as familiar. Familiar feels safe to your nervous system, even when it's painful. This is why you might find yourself recreating situations you consciously want to avoid. Your body is following its electromagnetic memory, not your mental intentions. Creating resonance instead of using force requires a different approach entirely. You start with small moments of genuine emotional coherence, not forced positivity, but authentic states of appreciation, wonder, or peace. Even 30 seconds of true heart coherence begins establishing a new field pattern. Your cells recognize this new frequency and begin adapting to it. The key is consistency over intensity. Willpower tries to create massive change through intense effort. Resonance creates lasting change through gentle, persistent presence. 5 minutes of genuine coherence practiced daily will transform your field more effectively than hours of forced positive thinking. Your emotional body learns through repetition, not force. When you operate from resonance, change feels different. Instead of exhausting struggle, there's an effortless unfolding. Instead of fighting against yourself, you're cooperating with natural laws. Instead of trying to become something new, you're allowing something that already exists within you to emerge and stabilize. You exist in multiple versions simultaneously right now. This isn't metaphor or spiritual philosophy. It's the quantum mechanical reality of consciousness. Just as particles exist in superposition until observed, you're currently experiencing multiple versions of yourself overlapping in the same space-time. The anxious you, the confident you, the limited you, the unlimited you, they're all equally real, all present, waiting for your observation to collapse them into a single experience. Living in superposition feels like having multiple personalities competing for control. But it's actually the natural state of consciousness before it chooses a specific configuration. You might feel confident in the morning and completely different by afternoon, not because you're unstable, but because you're shifting between equally valid versions of yourself that exist in parallel. Each version has its own thoughts, emotions, and even physical sensations. The shift from merging with these versions to witnessing them is the quantum leap that changes everything. When you're merged, you believe you are the anxiety, you are the confidence, you are whatever state is currently dominant. But when you become the observer, you realize you're the consciousness that can experience any of these states without being defined by them. You're not the waves. You're the ocean that can express itself as any wave. This observer state isn't detachment or dissociation. It's the most intimate relationship possible with your experience, so intimate that you can witness it without becoming it. You can feel fear moving through your system while knowing you are not fear. You can experience joy without needing to grasp it. You can observe old patterns arising without automatically acting them out. This is true quantum consciousness, the ability to observe without collapsing immediately into identification. When you live from the observer position, something remarkable happens. You gain the ability to consciously choose which version of yourself to collapse into reality. Instead of automatically becoming whoever your triggers activate, you can pause in that space of superposition and select, not through force or will, but through conscious observation of the version you choose to embody. The versions of you that exist in superposition aren't random. They're organized along frequency spectrums. There's a version of you at every frequency, from fear to love, from scarcity to abundance, from separation to unity. These aren't future possibilities. They're present realities existing simultaneously in quantum space. Your observation determines which one manifests in your physical experience. The practice of witnessing requires a paradox, being fully present with your experience while not being consumed by it. You feel everything but identify with nothing. You experience the full spectrum of human emotion while maintaining awareness that you're the consciousness experiencing it. This isn't spiritual bypassing, it's quantum mastery. You're not avoiding your humanity. You're experiencing it from a higher dimensional perspective. When you first start witnessing instead of merging, it might feel like you're losing yourself. The solid sense of identity you've carried dissolves into something more fluid. Who are you if you're not your thoughts, emotions, or experiences? This dissolution isn't loss, it's liberation. You're discovering that your true identity isn't any single configuration, but the consciousness that can assume any configuration. The observer self doesn't judge the versions it witnesses. It doesn't label them good or bad, spiritual or unspiritual, evolved or primitive. It simply observes with infinite curiosity. This non-judgmental awareness creates space for all versions to exist without conflict. The anxious you doesn't have to die for the confident you to live. They can coexist in superposition until you consciously choose which to embody. Inviting the collapse toward a chosen configuration isn't about forcing or willing. It's about sustained observation with preference. You observe all versions of yourself, then gently, consistently give more attention to the one you prefer. Like watering one plant more than others in a garden, that version grows stronger, more stable, more likely to manifest when you collapse from superposition into specific reality. Synchronicities aren't rewards for spiritual progress or signs that you're special. They're the natural result of coherent consciousness interacting with a responsive quantum field. When you start noticing repeated numbers, unexpected encounters, perfect timing that seems too precise to be random, you're not becoming more magical. You're becoming more coherent. Your signal is clarifying, and reality is responding with increasing precision. The language of synchronicity speaks in patterns, not words. That person who keeps appearing in your thoughts then suddenly texts you. The book that falls off the shelf, open to exactly the passage you needed. The song that plays with lyrics answering your unspoken question. These aren't messages from outside yourself. They're reflections of your own consciousness organizing reality around your dominant frequency. When synchronicities begin, they usually whisper. A subtle coincidence here, an interesting timing there. But when you ignore them, when you dismiss them as meaningless or refuse to act on their guidance, they intensify. Not because the universe is getting impatient, but because your own higher consciousness is increasing the signal strength to break through your resistance. The intensification follows a predictable pattern. First come gentle nudges. You think of someone and see their name somewhere. If you don't reach out, you'll run into them unexpectedly. Still no action? They'll appear in your dreams. Continue ignoring the sign, and circumstances will orchestrate a situation where interaction becomes unavoidable. The field doesn't force, but it does persist. Translating synchronicities into embodied action is where most people fail. They collect synchronicities like trophies, evidence that they're awakening but never act on them. This creates a backlog of unmanifested potential that eventually clogs the channel. The field stops sending clear signals when previous signals haven't been acted upon. It's like continuing to send text to someone who never responds. Eventually, you stop trying. The action required is usually simple and obvious. See repeated numbers. Pause and feel into what you were thinking at that moment. That's what's being confirmed. Keep encountering references to a specific place. Go there thinking of someone repeatedly. Reach out. The action doesn't have to be grand or perfect. It just needs to be taken. Synchronicities reveal alignment by showing you when your internal frequency matches external opportunities. When you're in fear, you'll synchronistically encounter evidence supporting fear. When you're in expansion, doors synchronistically open. The field isn't judging or rewarding, it's mirroring. The increase in positive synchronicities isn't because you're being blessed, but because you're broadcasting a more coherent signal. The deeper purpose of synchronicity is to train you to trust the invisible connections between consciousness and matter. Each time you notice a synchronicity and act on it with positive results, you strengthen your faith in the responsive nature of reality. You're learning to read the field's feedback system, to recognize when you're in flow versus forcing. Some synchronicities are personal, meant only for you. Others are collective, shared by groups experiencing similar frequency shifts. When multiple people experience the same synchronicities simultaneously, it reveals a collective consciousness shift in progress. These shared synchronicities often precede major collective timeline jumps. The most powerful synchronicities are the ones that seem impossible, the ones that require such precise orchestration of events that no amount of probability could explain them. These are moments when the veil between dimensions becomes so thin that the mechanics of reality become visible. They're showing you that the solid world is actually incredibly fluid when consciousness becomes coherent enough, when you stop needing synchronicities to validate your path and start seeing them simply as natural feedback. You've matured in your quantum consciousness. They become less exciting and more practical, like road signs when you're driving. Useful for navigation but not surprising or magical. This isn't loss of wonder, it's integration of magic as normal. The hardest part of quantum transformation isn't gaining something new, it's releasing what no longer serves. Your old identity doesn't want to die. It has momentum, neural pathways, relationships built around it. Every habit, role, and connection you've outgrown fights for survival because that's what patterns do. They persist. But holding on to outdated configurations while trying to embody new ones creates an energetic split that keeps you stuck between realities. Release isn't about rejection or abandonment. It's about completion. That anxious version of you that stayed hypervigilant. It protected you when you needed protection. Thank it, honor it, then let it know its job is done. That people-pleasing pattern that exhausted you. It helped you belong when belonging meant survival. Acknowledge its service, then gently retire it. You're not destroying parts of yourself. You're graduating from strategies that have fulfilled their purpose. The dissolution process often begins without your conscious participation. You'll find yourself forgetting to maintain certain habits. Relationships that once felt vital now feel draining. Activities you used to enjoy become meaningless. This isn't depression or disconnection. It's your energy naturally withdrawing from patterns that no longer match your frequency. Your consciousness is already releasing, even if your mind hasn't caught up. Empty space terrifies the conditioned mind. We're taught that emptiness means lack, that space means loneliness, that silence means something's wrong. So we fill every gap with noise, every pause with activity, every ending with an immediate beginning. But in quantum reality, emptiness is pure potential. It's the void from which all creation emerges. Without space, nothing new can enter. The paradox of safety through letting go challenges everything you've been taught about security. You've built elaborate structures to feel safe, routines, relationships, roles that define you. But these structures become prisons when they no longer serve your growth. True safety doesn't come from holding tight, but from trusting your ability to navigate whatever comes. It's the difference between gripping a branch versus knowing you can fly. Some releases happen gradually, like autumn leaves falling one by one. Others happen suddenly, like a snake shedding its skin in one complete piece. Both are natural. Both are necessary. The gradual releases teach patience and acceptance. The sudden ones teach trust and surrender. Your consciousness knows which type each situation requires. The relationships that need to dissolve will make themselves known through increasing discord. Conversations become harder. Misunderstandings multiply. What once connected you now separates you. This isn't failure, it's frequency differentiation. You're literally vibrating at different rates, and like instruments out of tune with each other. Being together creates dissonance rather than harmony. Creating space doesn't require dramatic exits or burned bridges. Sometimes it's as simple as no longer initiating contact and watching relationships naturally fade. Sometimes it's setting boundaries that didn't exist before. Sometimes it's physically relocating to an environment that matches your new frequency. The how matters less than the willingness to allow space. The fertile soil of emptiness is where your new reality takes root. Just as seeds need dark, quiet soil to germinate, your new identity needs space free from the constant reinforcement of old patterns. This gestation period feels vulnerable because you're neither who you were nor who you're becoming. You're simply space, potential, possibility. The art lies in holding space without immediately filling it. When a relationship ends, resist immediately seeking another. When a habit dissolves, don't immediately replace it. When an identity fragment falls away, don't immediately construct a new one. Sit in the spaciousness. Feel the emptiness without making it mean anything. Let the void teach you its wisdom. The present moment isn't a fleeting instant between past and future. It's a dense field of infinite possibility that you can learn to inhabit more fully. Most people skim across the surface of now, their attention scattered between memory and anticipation, never actually landing in the rich depth of this moment. But when you learn to thicken the present through conscious observation, intentional breath and spacious awareness, you create a gravity well that draws your desired reality toward you. Observation without agenda is the first element of this trinity. Not looking for something specific, not trying to notice what you think you should notice, but simply witnessing what is with complete presence. The texture of light on your wall, the specific quality of silence between sounds, the subtle sensation of air on your skin. This isn't mindfulness practice, it's consciousness training. You're teaching your awareness to be here, now, fully. Each moment of pure observation gathers energy that would otherwise dissipate into mental noise. When you truly see the steam rising from your morning coffee, when you fully feel your feet connecting with the earth as you walk, when you completely hear the person speaking to you without planning your response, you're not just being present. You're consolidating consciousness into a coherent force that can actually influence reality. Breath is the bridge between voluntary and involuntary, conscious and unconscious, mind and body. It's the only vital function you can control or release to automation. This makes it your direct access point to the quantum field. When you breathe consciously, not forcing, just aware, you're literally pumping coherence into your electromagnetic field with each inhale and releasing static with each exhale. The breath pattern that stabilizes resonance isn't complicated. Inhale for a count that feels natural, pause at the top without tension, exhale slightly longer than the inhale, pause at the bottom without forcing. This simple rhythm, maintained for just 2 minutes, shifts your nervous system from sympathetic to parasympathetic dominance, from survival to creation, from noise to signal. Space is the container that holds it all. Not physical space, though that helps, but energetic space. The pause between thoughts, the gap between breaths, the silence between words. This space isn't empty. It's pregnant with potential. It's where the quantum field can reorganize without interference from your constant mental activity. Creating space means saying no to urgency, resisting the addiction to busyness, choosing presence over productivity. The daily trinity works synergistically. Observation shows you what is. Breath aligns you with what's possible. Space allows the shift from one to the other. Together, they create a thickened present moment that becomes so energetically dense, it warps probability around it. Future potentials get pulled into this concentrated now. Past patterns lose their grip on this stabilized presence. Morning practice sets the resonance for your entire day. Before engaging with any external input, No phone, no news, no conversations. Spend 5 minutes with the Trinity. Observe your inner landscape without judgment. Breathe coherence into your field. Hold space for whatever wants to emerge. This isn't meditation, it's frequency selection. You're choosing which version of yourself will navigate the day. Evening practice integrates and completes. Before sleep, instead of reviewing what happened or planning tomorrow, thicken the present one more time. Observe what your body is holding from the day. Breathe release into any tension. Create space for your consciousness to reset during sleep. This allows your nervous system to integrate new patterns while old ones dissolve in the restorative void of deep sleep. The thickness of presence becomes palpable with practice. Colors become more vivid. Sounds gain dimension. Time seems to slow down even as more gets accomplished. You're not doing anything special. You're simply being fully here. But being fully here is so rare that it creates a field effect organizing reality around your coherent presence. You've reached the end of this transmission, but you're standing at the beginning of something far greater. Everything you've learned about standing in the static between frequencies, about choosing resonance over willpower, about witnessing your multiple selves, reading synchronicities, creating space, and thickening the present. These aren't separate techniques. They're facets of a single diamond, different angles of observing the same fundamental truth. You are the consciousness that creates reality through observation, and that power is available to you in every moment. Progress in quantum consciousness doesn't happen in straight lines. It spirals. You'll revisit the same themes at higher frequencies each time, understanding them more deeply, embodying them more fully. The anxiety you thought you'd transcended will return, but you'll meet it from a different level of consciousness. The patterns you believed were dissolved will resurface, but you'll have new tools, deeper presence, clearer observation. This isn't regression. It's integration at progressively higher orders of coherence. Your individual frequency shift creates ripples that extend far beyond your personal reality. When you stabilize in a new consciousness configuration, you become what physicists call a strange attractor, a point of coherence that organizes chaos into pattern. People around you begin shifting without knowing why. Situations that seem stuck suddenly unstick. Your presence alone becomes a catalyst for transformation, not through doing, but through being. Collective resonance amplifies exponentially. When two or more consciousness fields align in coherence, they don't just add together, they multiply. This is why certain gatherings feel electric with possibility. This is why some relationships catalyze massive transformation. This is why group meditations can shift collective timelines. You're not just changing your reality, you're contributing to a collective frequency shift that's reorganizing human consciousness itself. Living from the observing self becomes your new baseline, not through effort, but through recognition that this is who you've always been beneath the noise. The observer isn't something you become, it's something you remember. Every moment you choose to witness rather than merge, every breath you take with conscious presence, every space you hold without filling, you're strengthening your identification with the eternal observer rather than the temporary experience. The stable note you're becoming doesn't mean you'll never feel chaos again. It means you'll remain centered within it. Like the eye of a hurricane, you can be perfectly still while everything swirls around you. Your stability becomes a tuning fork that helps others find their own center. Your coherence becomes a lighthouse that guides others through their own transformation. As you integrate everything you've discovered, remember that mastery isn't perfection, it's consistency. You don't need to be in perfect coherence every moment. You just need to return to center more quickly when you drift. You don't need to read every synchronicity correctly. You just need to act on the ones you notice. You don't need to release everything at once. You just need to keep creating space. The quantum reality you've been sensing, the fluid nature of existence you've been glimpsing, the creative power you've been touching. This isn't a special state to achieve. It's the natural state that emerges when you stop interfering with your own coherence. You're not learning to manifest. You're remembering that you've always been manifesting. You're simply becoming conscious of the process. Your new reality has already begun. It started the moment you recognized yourself in these words. Every sign you've been noticing, every shift you've been feeling, every moment of uncertainty, that's actually expansion. They're all confirmations that you're exactly where you need to be. The quantum shift isn't coming. It's here. You're not preparing for transformation. You're in it. From this moment forward, you carry a new understanding. Reality is responsive. Consciousness is creative. Observation determines experience. The space between thoughts is fertile with possibility. Your breath is a bridge between dimensions. Your presence alone can shift timelines. These aren't beliefs to hold, but truths to embody. Not concepts to understand, but realities to live. The field is always listening. Your new frequency is broadcasting. The stable note you've become is already harmonizing with others who resonate at this frequency. Together, you're creating a new collective baseline, a new normal where conscious creation isn't extraordinary, but obvious, where quantum shifts aren't miracles, but Monday. Welcome to your quantum reality. Welcome to conscious observation. Welcome to the life that begins the moment you realize you've always been the one creating it.